This video is all about reducing the reverb or echo in my office room. Results later in the video, but spoiler alert, the results really surprised me. This project is almost embarrassingly simple, and I'm just going to use whatever scraps of 12mm or 18mm sheet material that I can find in my workshop. MDF is best as it's dense and it'll absorb more sound, but ply, chipboard or even OSB will be absolutely fine too. First I'm ripping some strips down to 60mm wide at the table saw because I have one, but obviously you can use a circular saw or even a hand saw for this. And then I'm cutting the pieces to length at the miter saw to form a simple box, and I can glue and screw the corners together with butt joints since these screws are going to be hidden later. Screwing into the edge grain of MDF is often problematic as it has a tendency to split, so I usually go a little bit bigger than I ordinarily would with the pilot hole just to avoid that. You want the drill bit to be not as wide as the threads of the screws that you're using, but as wide or a little wider than the shaft of the screw. I've got another scrap of ply here, and it doesn't really matter how wide this piece is, but it will matter how long it is, so I'm offering it up into the inside of my frame to mark up the length so that I can cut it to fit inside nice and snug. I add glue and fit this inside right at the back and use some pin nails to hold it in place until the glue dries, but clamps or screws could be used instead. This panel will keep the frame square, and it provides somewhere where wall fixings can be added later. Then I round over all of the front edges of the frame since these are going to be wrapped in fabric, so I don't want the edges or the corners to be sharp. My work here looks very crude and the box looks ugly, but it doesn't matter, no one will ever see it, apart from those thousands of people watching this video. I'm giving the workbench a good clean before I get my fabric out, and I ordered this online, but if you're on a budget you can usually get some great fabric in charity shops. I wanted something a little specific though for matching the decor in the room where these will be, and I chose this grey with orange flecks, 92% wool, 8% nylon, 500 GSM upholstery fabric. I cut it to size using some fabric scissors at about 70mm wider and longer than the dimensions of my frame on all four edges. I'll pop the sizings on screen now. I lay the fabric face down on the bench, and I place some of this 50mm rock wool sound insulation slab right in the centre. These slabs measure 1200 by 600mm, and I had some of this left over from previous jobs, and I've used this a lot over the years, so I know it works incredibly well for absorbing sound. Rockwool is not a sponsor and I have no affiliation with them, by the way, but I first used it when I built an insulated extension to my first workshop shed to isolate the noise from my dust extractor and compressor. There are videos about that on my channel, links in the description box below, and then I used it again to insulate the ceiling and the walls in my new workshop. Again, videos about that on my channel too, links below. You only need to put your ear up to this stuff and you immediately realise how much ambient sound this stuff absorbs. It's brilliant stuff for that. Next I can place my wooden frame over the top of the insulation, and I can start upholstering it using some staples. And I'm not good at upholstery, but the best method for me is basically to do one edge first, then the opposite edge, pulling it taut but not too tight. This isn't a chair seat pad or anything like that, so it's not going to get sat on, it's just a sound panel, so it doesn't need to be too tight. And then I do the other two edges. And finally I can work on getting the corners tidy, and this is the trickier part. It's worth taking your time and removing some excess fabric at the corners so that you can fold the fabric as neatly as possible. You could add a piece of cotton or some sort of other backing fabric as a dust cover at the back if you wanted to, but I'm not going to bother, seeing as these panels are going to be up against a wall and they're just going to sit there undisturbed. I find the centre of the back panel and I'm going to add a single keyhole fixing. I'll link to these in the description box, they're quite handy for wall mounting things. I only need to use one here since these panels are not particularly heavy. I don't want my upholstery staples to scratch my nice freshly painted walls, so to get around that I'm simply going to add a screw in each corner of the back of the frame, protruding just by a few millimetres. And I don't want my screws scratching the walls either, and I was going to add some self-adhesive rubber feet that I thought I had, but turns out I didn't, so instead I'm just going to put a dab of hot glue on the head of the screws. Time to install now, and I drill a pilot hole using a masonry bit and add a 5mm rawl plug. Important to make sure that there are no electrical cables or pipes in the wall first, of course. Then I add my screw protruding about 6 to 8mm or so from the wall, and then I can fit the keyhole fixing over the head of the screw. I made 3 of these panels and I placed them right behind my desk since that's where my microphone is pointing, and I want the microphone to capture my voice directly. I don't want it to capture the reflections of my voice, which is bouncing off the walls as I speak. Adding these sound panels to the hardest surfaces within the room, like the walls for example, is going to give the best results, but if you wanted to take this even further, you could even mount them to the ceiling if you wanted to reduce reverb even more. If you have a solid floor, like a laminate for example, then you could add a rug or some carpet, which is going to help too. I have 2 big glazed doors in my office, so I also took the opportunity to install a curtain rail above them and add some heavy curtains. The more dense the fabric, the better, and these will also help to absorb some of the sound in the room. I kind of knew that these sound panels would make a difference, but I underestimated just how effective they would be. So here are the results. The next footage you'll see is a comparison of the room before and then after adding the sound panels, and then finally the room with sound panels and curtains. Check, check, check. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Impressive results, I think you'll agree, and I actually like the way they look on the walls too. They take very little time to make, and you can make them smaller or different shapes and get creative with them if you want to. The sound slab insulation is easy to cut, either with a handsaw or a sharp knife. And they cost very little money too. Here's a breakdown. You can get a pack of 9 50mm sound slabs for £30, so that's £3.33 per slab. I used scraps of MDF and ply, but if you wanted to buy some, you're probably looking at around £20 for half a sheet, which is enough to make quite a lot of these panels. And you might even be able to get your local DIY store to cut the pieces to size for you. But for each panel, you're probably looking at around £3 in sheet material, and my fabric was around £6 per metre, cut from a 1.4 metre roll, so 1 metre was enough to do 1 panel. Add on the cost of a few screws and staples if you want to, and you're looking at under £15 per panel, and these are so much more effective at reducing reverb in a room than any of those acoustic foam products that you're likely to find online. Trust me, I did a lot of music production in the past, and I tried all sorts of them to acoustically treat the rooms that I was working in, and they do very little. With these sound panels, I immediately heard the difference just in ambient sound in the room with my own ears once they were hung, without even needing to do the sound tests that I showed earlier in the video. That's how effective they are. It's just a much more pleasing sound to the ears in the room now when I'm talking. And I wish I'd have done it a long time ago, to be honest, because now I can record podcasts, like the Workshop Banter podcast, by the way, if you haven't checked it out already, links down below. And I can narrate my videos and know that the audio quality will be much improved. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos if you'd like to help support the channel, plus get early access to my videos, exclusive content, free project plans and cut lists, and a name credit at the end of my videos. You'll find links to my Patreon and YouTube channel membership in the description box below. Thanks for watching.